Beginning in the viewport, what I did was I added a stoplight, or spotlight, sorry, in front of the first person camera, which projects what will be the flashlight's light. I increased the intensity because the flashlight seemed a little dim, but then in the event graph, in order to use the flashlight, I created two events: toggle a flashlight on server, which actually calls the other event toggle flashlight on client, which sets the visibility of the spotlight. So then up here, I created an event for the F key, which when pressed, will toggle the light between, will call toggle flashlight on server, which also plays the flashlight sound. And then when clicked again, we'll toggle flashlight on server again, but without is on checked.
Oh, brilliant. No, I haven't found everything I need to yet. Nice.
So for the door and collectible functions, what I did was, we'll start with the door. I created a collision box on the door that when you step into it, it'll cast to the first person character and enable the input. And when you end the overlap, it will also cast to the first person character and then disable the input. And both functions get player controller in order to work. So I created an event for the E key so that when it's pressed, it'll cast to the first person game mode to get the remaining collectibles, which will then branch off, and if it's successful, it'll open the door using a timeline, which will then set the relative rotation. If it's unsuccessful, the door won't open, and you'll simply get a message of the sound of the character saying that you can't open the door because you haven't collected all the collectibles. So in the collectibles blueprint, it uses the same functionality as the door as far as how to pick up the collectibles. But this time it calls, before, when you step into the box, it'll call the widget to tell you to press E to pick up the collectible. So once you press E, it'll call the first person game mode, which will check the remaining collectibles once again and set the remaining collectibles, which will play a randomized sound cue where I recorded various sounds of the character saying things like nice, or this must be one of those, or something like that, and then it'll randomize those so that he'll say a different one every time you pick up the package. So after that happens, it will remove the original widget from the screen and call the new widget saying that you picked up the amount of collectibles remaining, as opposed to how many. No, I'm sorry. It'll call how many collectibles you've picked up as opposed to how many are left. So it'll say 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, and so on. And then it'll proceed to destroy the actor that you're picking up, so that when you pick it up, it's not in the level anymore. So as far as the collectible widget, it's just a basic screen where it says X out of Y collected, but then all the functionality is in the graph. So after the event construct, it'll cast to the first person game mode, which will set the game mode reference that I created. After that, it begins to play the animation of the widget fading onto the screen, and then after a 3-second delay, it will fade back out. That way it doesn't stay on the screen after you've collected the collectible. And then after a 0.3-second delay, it will remove the widget from the parent.
Odd-looking fireplace. Uncle had some weird taste.
Now, the journal and the fireplace work very similarly to the exit door, in the same respect that they are used with a collision box. So once you step into the collision box, which is the begin overlap box here, it will bring the widget on the screen that tells you how to pick up the journal. It'll say press E to read journal, and it'll add it to the viewport. From here, it will break off from the on-component overlap and cast first-person character to enable input. So when the character ends overlap, which means that when he steps out of the collision box, it will first remove the widget from the parent, because if you're not in the box, you're not going to be triggered to open the journal. So it'll cast first-person character again and disable input. So then, once you're in the collision box, you can press E, where I added a flip-flop node where the first time you press it, it will remove the original widget from the parent and then display the journal widget on the screen, which is the actual reading of the journal. And it'll add that to the viewport. And then when you press E again, it will remove that journal from the screen. And the journal is just red writing that appears in the middle of the screen with a little picture of a book that I took in the background. I put the picture through a photo editor to cartoonize it, make it look a little more video gamey. And that'll appear in the middle of the screen when you read the journal. Now the fireplace is pretty much exactly the same as the journal. When you begin the overlap, it will tell you to press E to admire. But this time when you press E, instead of it bringing up a widget, it'll play a sound of the character explaining what he's looking at. So the real fun of this level comes from the jump scares, and there's a bunch of them. Now all the jump scares are triggered the same way. It's all a trigger box, but then the functionality changes from jump scare to jump scare. Now I'm not going to show you all of them, but for instance, with the first jump scare, when the character steps into the trigger box, it'll cast the first-person character, just because it needs to be the first-person character that steps through the trigger box. Which will get the actor of class, which is the ghost that will be part of the jump scare. Now, for this particular jump scare, the ghost actually walks from one side of the screen to the other. So I also needed to get an actor of an endpoint, which is just a basic arrow that I use as a reference for the character to move from one spot to the arrow. Now, in order to not be able to trigger this box every time you walk through it, because if you're exploring the house, you could walk through the same spot multiple times. So I put in a do once node, that way it doesn't trigger this after the first time. So after checking the actor location, it'll trigger the jump scare, which will play the jump scare sound, which if you're playing the level, you'll hear a lot because most of the jump scares have that sound. After the jump scare sound and the ghost walks through, it will delay for 1.5 seconds, where it will play another sound of the ghost itself making a laugh. This also happens in several of the jump scares where the ghost will say something, or just to add effect. And then after another short delay, it will play a sound of the character reacting to the ghost. And just to look at another one, let's go with... I don't want to ruin the final jump scare, so let's go with the ball drop. All right, that's a good one. Now, after triggering the ball drop, I had a problem with the chance that the player would walk up the stairs before the ball would drop. So in order to do that, after it casts the first-person character, and again, it will do it only once, that way it doesn't trigger multiple times, it'll get the player character and disable their movement. Now, once that happens, it will spawn a small red ball, which will drop onto the stairs, causing it to trigger the gravity and the physics engine, which will make the ball roll down the stairs in front of the character. So it'll play a sound to make the ball sound like it's hitting the steps. And then after that happens, it will re-enable the character movement, that way he can move up the stairs. But it won't ruin the jump scare because the character won't be able to move past the ball before the ball actually rolls down the stairs. Yeah, so all of them are basically the same. Like I said, they start with a trigger box and then a cast of the first person character, a do once node so they don't happen again. Actually, there is one that I think might be the dining room. Now, this one was a bit trickier because I needed a ghost to appear on the dining room table. Well, all right, when you walk into the room, there's already 3 ghosts sitting at the dining room table. Once you step into the trigger box, it makes another ghost appear laying on the table. And then after the jump scare sound, all 4 ghosts disappear. So once you trigger the trigger box, cast first person character, do once to make sure it doesn't happen again. Plays the jump scare sound. Now, once you trigger it, it will set the visibility of the coffin pose skeleton sequence, which is the ghost that's laying on the table. And then after a 2-second delay, it destroys all 4 actors, which is all 4 ghosts. And then also triggers the character responding to the ghosts. So I don't want to ruin all my jump scares here, but that's just, basically how the jump scares work in this game.